What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined this week by Paul Kilgallen.
Kilgallen. You got it the second time.
Second at bat. Paul and I are fresh off recording War Room. He's getting his first taste of the double dip Badlands record, where we do the first session for War Room that hit on Tuesday. Back half is for the pod. We answered like 7 or 8 questions out of the Discord, had a nice sort of wide-ranging conversation. Paul, I believe this is your first time hosting War Room, the flagship pod, alongside me. So how you doing? How you feeling?
It is. I am excited. I'm grateful for the opportunity to pinch hit for Connor while he's on the beach, hanging out, having drinks, smoking cigars, whatever he's doing. Yeah, I mean, look, we got summer coming up. What's not to feel good about?
It's a good time of the year, and always important that we have this last content sprint before Memorial Day weekend. So pods today, you already heard War Room and other guys, which was a great episode on our guy Geno Smith on Monday from Paul and Jake. Roster rankings will hit tomorrow, so make sure you look out for that and look out for how to access that from Dan and myself. Buck the Trend Friday, and then badlandstoj.com will have a nice Memorial Day sale on our Badlands polos, which are out there. And then we'll also have more information to come on the golf outing. So badlandstoj.com. Use that Memorial Day sale. What we're going to do today is, back in the day when I used to write and be able to pronounce names properly on the first time, not the second time. Give me some grace. I'm 37. And people mispronounce my last name all the time too. So this is a habit in my life. I used to always write a 12-pack. I write it every Friday. I still write it sometimes at Badlands. But before Memorial Day, I would always do a 30-pack of predictions for the Jets' upcoming season because it's too far out. But still, why not? Let's throw some predictions out there. We're not going to do 30, but we're going to go back and forth and give some high-level predictions for the Jets season. We have the schedule. We know what the top 50 players on the roster look like. We have a good enough feel for everything, I think, at this point to recklessly throw out some biased, subjective predictions with no consequences. We'll make more formal predictions when we get to the season preview guide as it gets a little closer. But for now, going into the summer, while the vibes are high, it feels like a good time to do this. So, Paul, I'm going to put you on the spot, and you kick us off with your first prediction for the New York Jets 2024 season.
I'm going to give us the softball of the century here, and I'm going to say the playoff streak is officially broken. Especially talking to Jake and recording these episodes about the quarterbacks, it's really like setting it in how long and how crazy this journey has been. You get numb after a while of seeing the Jet stats on TV, which are like, this many seasons without a playoff appearance. Or another fun one I saw that's been floating around this week is the Jets rank 5th in AFC East titles, even though there's only 4 teams in the AFC East because the Colts have 4. And so you get kind of numb to seeing that stuff after a while. And, just talking with Jake and really going into detail and rehashing what's gone on here in the last 12, 13 years at the quarterback position, it's really kind of set it in like how crazy this has all been. And I think it has to come to an end eventually statistically. And I think everything is lining up for us at this point to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and say the playoff streak is broken at, whatever we're at right now.
Lord, it better be. And now I've raised my bar to wanting home playoff game. I want beers in the MetLife parking lot in January to host a home playoff game, which of course means winning the division, which I think they're talented enough to do. I will piggyback onto that before we get into individual player predictions and things of that sort. I think they will break the playoff drought, and I think they will do it by winning the division. And that is both because I like what they did this offseason, and I actually think they do have the best roster on paper in the division. I think Buffalo's taken a little bit of a step back. They're still going to be dangerous. They're still tough with Josh Allen and McDermott, among a few other talented players. Miami, it does feel like at some point, like Tua will get banged up. And if that happens, like what does that offense really look like? At some point, Tyreek Hill will slow down a little bit. And they took some hits to their roster this offseason too. Now, they kicked the crap out of the Jets in both games last year, but quarterback situation will be very different this time around. And I think it'll be close, but I think Jets-Dolphins final game of the year will be for the division. And I think that will push the Jets over the top to be the 3 seed hosting a home playoff game wild card weekend where they are 3.5 point favorites against like Jacksonville or Pittsburgh or something like that.
Love it. Hard agree. I'm a card carrying Buffalo Bills hater. I'm on record for a long time
Yes.
saying they're not as good as everybody says they is. The Dolphins, like, I don't know. I feel like everybody kind of feels the same way about the Dolphins. And for God's sake, it's going to be fun to watch the Patriots just stink again and live in the basement where they should be. I'm going to take it over to the defensive side of the ball. I think the defense is going to take a little bit of a step back this year. And that's not for any particular reason other than they've been very good for the last 2 years, and I think they are due for some injury trouble. They've had
Yep.
some onesie twosies. They lost some of the interior defensive linemen for short periods or for long periods of time last year. They lost Sauce to like a nagging concussion for a couple weeks last year. But I think they're due for a little bit more, trouble than they've seen in the last couple of years. And I think just statistically, they have been so good that it's almost they have to at least probably settle back to the norm a little bit. And so I think probably they're still going to be very good. I still think they're going to be top 10. I think that the scheme is good and the players that are in it are good. But I just don't think it'll be quite what it has been the last 2 years, especially when you're thinking about losing Bryce Huff, even though they did replace him with Hassan Reddick. I just think there's a slight backtick in that.
So I'm going to go to the offensive side of the football, and I do think it's reasonable. They are due for some like unfortunate injury regression on the defensive side of the ball. Although again, fingers crossed it doesn't happen, but they're due. I think Brees Hall is the best offensive player in football this season from a fantasy perspective, and probably from just a normal perspective. But when you're talking about offensive output, rushing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, he takes that top spot, at least statistically, from Christian McCaffrey, and he ends up becoming the talking point of the Jets offense, not Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers will be fine and good and better than any Jets quarterback we can recently remember. I don't think he's going to be the best quarterback in football. I don't think he's going to be like a top 3 quarterback in football, but I think he'll be like a top 9 or 10, which will be enough for what we need this year. But I think Brees Hall will be the running back who is in the MVP conversation. Like we had Jonathan Taylor in it and Christian McCaffrey in it. He will have an obscene year from a Jet standard for offensive production. And that's something like, 1,400 rushing yards with another 600 receiving yards on top of that. A ton of touchdowns between, receiving and rushing. The guy we saw down the stretch last year, like in the Washington game and the New England game and some of these other games. And he will be healthy. He will be in his prime. And I just think he will be the focal point of the offense. And the Jets are not going to be shy about using him insane amounts to protect Rodgers and make sure Rodgers is healthy down the stretch. And I think the cause of that is that he is the real story on the Jets offense. And again, like fantasy player number 1 this year.
It's funny. I jotted down some ideas before we got started to make sure we weren't stepping on each other. So I have a whole bunch here that I could pick from. Number 4 is word for word. Brees Hall becomes the top fantasy player in the NFL. You win your league if you have him. So I'm all on board with you on that one. I really do genuinely believe that. I am going to pivot and disagree with you on the next one. And I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers wins comeback player of the year. I think, he was already primed mentally bouncing from the Packers last year where he had that, kind of take no prisoners, like I'm going to run through the NFL this year kind of thing going on in his head. And he has that competitive kind of almost like a screw loose mentality that you see all the top athletes really have. And I think that has only been exacerbated by the injury and by all the off the field nonsense and all. I just think that mentally he will will himself to doing something special this year. And I think it's still possible, even if he does miss a game or two. That said, also that's not, you don't necessarily have to be an MVP to win that award. All you have to do is be the best comeback player. And I think so part of it will be a vacuum of nobody else who really fits the criteria and performs well enough. But I think, I think we're going to see something special from him. And I think he wins comeback player of the year.
I like it. I hope so. I mean, it'd be nice to just have, I'm hoping they get I think if they get 14 or more games from Rodgers this year, they definitely make the playoffs. So that is sort of the biggest variable out there on that. So I'll kind of add that on to my earlier prediction. I think Tyrod Taylor could give you a nice like 2-1 and is solid, and like they don't kind of miss a beat if it's in the right part of the schedule and they're like okay there. Um, I will say for my next one that Hassan Reddick leads the Jets in sacks. He again has double digits. Let's say he has 11 and a half or so. I think Quinnen is second with like 8.5. He doesn't get to double digits, but he takes a bit of a step up from where he was at last season. And I think, everyone will kind of be watching Huff versus Reddick. I think they'll finish with comparable amounts of sacks. Both of them will finish between with like 11 to 13 sacks, and both sides are going to be happy with what they get in the vacuum of this year. And Reddick will be a key part in how the Jets, close games down, and that's what I'm expecting ultimately from him.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. He's an exciting player. I can't wait to see him in the scheme and see how they deploy him. It should be fun. On that note, I think that this is going to be Jeff Ulbricht's last year with the Jets.
Yep.
I think the smoke has been building with him for a little while that he's ready to be a head coach. And, he's doing all the things. He's putting his name out there. He was out there at the Senior Bowl. And I think it's just been building for such a long time that at a certain point, it's going to hit a critical mass. And there's going to be, again, 7-8 jobs out there like there always are. And I think he gets one of them next year. I will say the one fly in the ointment with that is that out of those 7 or 8 jobs, there's probably a limited number of opportunities that they're willing to give to defensive head coaches. And he's going to be competing with Mike Vrabel, and he's going to be competing with Bill Belichick. So that's the one fly in the ointment there. But I do still think this is Jeff Ulbricht's last year with the Jets. And as an add-on to that, I'll say potentially Marquand Manuel as the next defensive coordinator. He got a look from the Jaguars in the offseason this year. And I think based upon what he's done with the secondary, he's primed to step up and take the next role.
I like it. I don't disagree. I think we'll get one more really nice year from Ulbrich here as a defensive coordinator, but then it's time. He's going to be looking to do something else and get out of Saleh's proverbial shadow and go somewhere else. Offensive side of the ball, I think we get a third straight Garrett Wilson 1,000-yard season. I think he is probably in that like 12 to 1,300 yard range, closer to 1,300. I think where you see the biggest spike is in the touchdown numbers. Those have been kind of flat and like they don't pop on the page, and that's more of a function of the quarterback than him. So I don't think he's necessarily going to have like 1,700 yards this year. I think the Jets are going to be a little more run heavy than people expect. I think they're going to spread the ball around in the short passing game with all their backs, with Conklin and with Corley. But I do think like Wilson makes that jump from like 4 touchdowns to like 9 or 10 touchdowns, while again for the third year in a row going comfortably over 1,000 yards. And I think without question he'll be their leading receiver, and we'll have a very nice rhythm with Aaron Rodgers. So he'll post career highs in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He won't have the Brandon Marshall 2015 season. I think maybe that comes in year 4 or year 5. But I think everyone will leave very happy and very comfortable with him as the lead receiver.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna we're at 8 right now, so we got 2 left. So for my last one, I'm gonna throw a wacky one out there, and I'm gonna go against the grain a little bit of what I know you believe. So I'm gonna say Olu starts fewer than 4 games, and here's my rationale: is that the same reason I said the defense is probably going to get bit by injuries a little bit this year. The luck on the offensive line has been so bad for so long. I just feel like they're due to have a reasonably healthy season on the offensive line. That includes AVT staying healthy, Tyron Smith giving us more than we thought he could. Maybe Moses stays healthier longer than we thought he could. Maybe Simpson plays really well, and that move to guard never happens, and Tippmann stays healthy the whole year as well. And here's like kind of the thing that I think seals it, is that how Jets would it be that like they finally do the right thing with the offensive line and get more than 5 bodies who are capable of starting, and then we don't need it. And then that gives the fans a reason to say, well, why did you do that? Why did you waste a first-round pick on Olu? The guy didn't even play 4 games, right? So that's what I'm going with. Olu starts fewer than 4 games.
That is a first world problem if and when that happens. As much as I'd like to see Olu out there, but yes, that would be very Jets if it played out in that manner. From a transaction standpoint, I will say that post June 1st, the Jets will make one sort of like mid-tier veteran addition. I think that probably comes at safety versus receiver. I think they're going to wait it out at receiver to see what Brownlee and Gibson look like over the summer. And I think they're in the back of their mind. They know they have the Devontae trade to go push for again. So I don't think we see a veteran added at receiver. I think it's more likely it comes at safety in June or July. Not fully out of the question. I think that they add another backup offensive lineman, but I'm not anticipating that happening. I also think they'll be proactive in trying to get an extension done with Michael Carter before the season starts after everything that played out with Huff. So those are kind of the things I'm keeping an eye on before we get to training camp. And then I think, they'll play it by ear in training camp with what happens, if they're going to do anything proactive before week one.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. Did we rip through your list here? Can I take us? What are we at?
Oh,
now?
we're at 10. Okay, we're doing 12. My bad.
Got it.
All right, so I'm gonna go with tight end group for the last one here. I'm gonna say
Okay.
Tyler Conklin has a Pro Bowl season just
Wow.
because
All
we
right.
have seen glimpses of what he can do with Zach Wilson, right?
Yep.
We have not really seen him with capable quarterback play. Rodgers is a guy that uses tight ends. He has traditionally elevated tight ends that haven't really done much else in their careers. Most recently, what was the kid in Green Bay who went to Chicago
Tonyan.
afterwards? Yeah, Robert Tonyan. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think Conklin is more talented than a lot of the tight ends we've seen with Rodgers in his career. And I think that he really emerges this year and he gets to finally kind of enjoy some success as a Jet. He's out front in front of the media every week answering questions after every brutal loss, after every terrible offensive performance. He does nothing but do and say the right thing. And he struggled with drops a little bit at the beginning of his Jets tenure, but then he really improved. He's good after the catch. I think things are lining up for him to have a Pro Bowl season. And as part of a 1B on that, I'm going to say Jeremy Ruckert kind of establishes himself. He finds a role in this offense. I don't know what it would be. I think that we all at Badlands hope that it's more of an H-back type role where they get him in the backfield, they get him split out blocking, they do all kinds of creative things with him and take advantage of what he really does well. And then once in a while, you sneak him out down the sideline and you hit him on that wheel route, and he's shown already that he can do that, right? So I think as 1A and 1B, it's Conklin has a great year, and Ruckert really finds his way to be a part of the offense.
The Bill Ruckert special. I will add on to that Kenny Yeboah and Zach Kuntz won't have any impact on the offense this year. But Kenny Yeboah will make the team again because Brant Boyer demands he makes the team
exactly
for special teams purposes, and they'll keep signing him to one-year deals like Solomon Thomas to round out the bottom of this roster. I'm trying to remember. I have to check the spreadsheet. I don't think Yeboah made the top 50 on the roster rankings. He may have been right at the bottom, but you'll have to tune in Thursday to see. I know Ruckert certainly did, and I'm hoping for a bigger role for him without question. Defensive side of the ball, I want to get one more in there. I think Will McDonald under 5.5 sacks this year. I think they end up playing Reddick 65, 70% of the snaps. I think Jermaine Johnson looks more and more like a full-time player, not a rotational player. And those two guys are so good that it's a limited role for McDonald. And he's fine and as a situational third down guy, and maybe that's 4 sacks and a bunch of hurries, but I don't think we're getting a 7, 8, 9, 10 Will McDonald sack season. I think you're getting 4.5 or 5 sacks, and he has a couple nice moments, but he's a role player, and he's playing 30, 32% of the snaps, and everyone feels very good about Jermaine and Reddick being out there basically a ton with, Quinnen and Kinlaw and however else they want to handle everything up front to fill some of the JFM role, which, again, I still think there's a world where they get a guy like Calais Campbell potentially. It's going to depend if they think Leonard Taylor could be that guy. Can Michael Clemens actually make a real leap? But it's an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on. But I have pretty limited expectations for Will McDonald this year. I think he'll be fine. It's not going to be bad or a major liability. I'm just not expecting a 9-10 sack season.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's about how long does it take for Saleh to get him where he needs to be, right? He's certainly talented enough to be an impact pass rusher in the NFL. It's just that with some of the other, defensive guys that Saleh's worked with, it's generally taken about 3 years to get to the spot where he was comfortable with them. So I agree with you. I don't think it's this year. I think next year is the year you look out for with him.
All right. So, I mean, look, I wrote this in the, they have the photo booth thing at the wedding. So I took some ridiculous pictures with my wife, but you got to like sign it. So I just figured I'd sign the Jets record under it, and I put 13-4. Now I was a little drunk when I wrote that. I wouldn't say 13-4 as of this day. Um, I would probably default back more to like 11-6. That feels like a little safer and a little more right after looking at their schedule. So my pre-Memorial Day weekend overall Jets record prediction is 11-6. I think they're going to start 4-1. I talked about that a little bit on the schedule podcast with Will on TOJ Talks on Sunday. I think they'll start 4-1, and I think from there they could be like 7-5, down the stretch, and that's enough. And that 11-6 is enough to clinch the AFC East the last week of the year. I think they go 4-2 in the AFC East. They finally have a winning record in the division. I feel like they'll lose a dumb game to New England that drives us crazy, but they'll split with them. They'll sweep either one of the two of Buffalo or Miami and split with the other one and go 4-2 there. I think primetime is a mixed bag. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost week one, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they had a couple nice moments in primetime, including another win over Buffalo. So that's generally where I'm at with the schedule flow right now. Now at this stage, how many games are you planning to go to next year? I mean, you're like in the same boat as me. You got kids. It's a little different now.
Yeah, I got kids. I grew up going to games. I lived like 3 miles from the stadium, and my family had season tickets until like 2011. And like since then, I've been to like 2 or 3 games. Like I really don't go very much anymore. But I could find a reason to get out there with you guys, when the vibes are right and everything's good. I will say also credit to you for going 13-4 after a few cocktails. I think if I had a few beers in me, I'd probably say 17-0 and then 20-0.
Why
would be
not?
where I'd go. So,
yeah.
So good for you for being at least a little bit humble. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll get out to the stadium a couple times this year. How can you not? Especially if it feels halfway through the season like something special is building. You're definitely going to get that feeling of like, all right, I just got to get there. I got to see it in person.
Yeah, every year I drag myself out to at least like 2 or 3. It's kind of been I've been averaging the last few years. I think I'm going to make it out to London. I think we got to look at some logistics, but
yeah,
I think it's probably going to happen. I do really want to get out there. I think
I'm actually like 95% for that one too.
There we go. So I think we might have a couple interesting arrangements that we're able to utilize, and I'm excited about the potential there. So it's pretty early in the season, but I do think it's a very winnable game, and I think there's a chance they're like 3-1 going into that one, or 4-1, and like the energy is in a good spot to go overseas and not have a truly miserable flight home because they lost to Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy. And
but also, how Jets would it be to go lose to Sam Darnold in London?
I mean, there's a very, and you're doing this quarterback series now, which is funny that you're doing it. There's a very real world the Jets play Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, and Geno Smith this year, which are 3 of the, I think, 4 episodes that you're doing, along with our Sanchez one, which is.
And they have a bunch of Fox games, so Sanchez is going to call a bunch of games.
We just can't escape the ghosts; they're everywhere. I mean, the ghosts of Jets Pass are chasing us around in this schedule. But I think, like generally, heading into the summer, as a Jet fan, it's okay to have some optimism and be happy with where things are heading into this year. On paper, it's a top 3 roster in the AFC. I think you can make a case it's 1. You can make a case it's like 4 or 5. I think if you settle in the median, it's probably like 2 or 3, depending on how you evaluate certain players. I'm just focused on the conference and the division right now. I'm not worried about the whole league. Can they be good enough to win the AFCs? That's where I'd love to see this team get to. I feel like they met their potential if they can win this division and host a home playoff game where they are like credibly the favorite and they're not just sneaking in at 8-9 or 9-8 as the 7th seed. So that's how I will wrap it. I will also wrap it with a reminder again, Memorial Day weekend sale, Badlands, TOJ.com. We'll share the code Friday morning. If you haven't checked out or upgraded to War Room yet, do it, because we answered a ton of Discord questions in the War Room video. Roster rankings are dropping tomorrow, which are War Room specific for access. So upgrade there. And Paul, any final words?
No, one more thing on the quarterbacks. We have a primetime night game against the Patriots on national TV, and now the Patriots have a rookie quarterback. So I think Meeg said it in the group chat, like if we could get a moment that's just kind of close to what we got with Darnold and Wilson, just crumbling on national TV in a night game against the Patriots, if we could have that happen in the other direction, man, I'll be a happy guy. So
We need that. We deserve it. We've waited long enough. We've suffered enough pain to get to enjoy that as the home opener, the first time Jet fans get to see Aaron Rodgers in person after what happened last year. Like, wouldn't it be nice just to open on Thursday night and win like 41-3, and Drake May throws 3 interceptions and gets sacked 5 times and has a fumble. It's been so long since the Jets have had a moment like that. I can't even really wrap my head around it. It would be incredibly nice. Only the Jets last year I could go to a home opener, find my way into having an incredible box seat situation where I was sitting right next to Garrett Wilson's dad. The Jets won on an amazing punt return in overtime. The stadium was like a college environment, and yet I've never seen a sadder, more miserable stadium in my life as we left the building. And I was a part of that because every single person knew what had actually happened there. And even though there was that temporary moment of relief, man. So let's get some positive energy back in MetLife on that Thursday night game. Thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Content on the feed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and back in our normal rhythm as always. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.